bonjour tout le monde.
Well, hello everyone. Welcome to day 2 on Global Health Impact, presented by Can Watch with its partners, Plan International Canada, World Vision Canada, and Media Style. This is an event also that has the support from the Government of Canada through Global Affairs Canada. I will be your moderator for today, Juliette Powell. I am an IT entrepreneur who's very excited about the possibility to use data to address the most urgent problems in the world. And as 2020 has shown, we will need a lot of creativity, innovation, diversity to be able to do it. But we are well supported today with a phenomenal co-host that will help us. Hello, Frédérique. Thank you. Hello, Juliette. I am Frédérique Thomas, currently director for Sogha Davy in Senegal, and I've been working at Mission Inclusion, an NGO that works for social inclusion of the least well-off in the world. So it's a pleasure to be here with you today. Here's a short video that reflects creativity of social art to transform behaviors and create change in Haiti. And also, I have with me another co-host, Martine Bernier. Hello everyone, my name is Martine Bernier, Director of Operations and Strategic Development at Médecins du Monde Canada, has been working for several years in Haiti, Doctors of the World Canada in English. Personally, I've spent over 20 years living in Haiti and working in health in Haiti. It's a pleasure to be with you today to co-host this Can Watch event. Over to you, Juliette. Okay, well, let's start by reviewing a few housekeeping items to make the most out of this experience today. You'll see it's not very difficult. First, you can activate full screen mode by clicking on the bottom right icon in the video window. I know it might not be instinctive, but keep the landing page open because there might be some links to have access to supporting documents, to workshops and other features. And I know that you want to make the most of it. You will find these details under the links to the right of the Webcast Canada landing page. Those of you in full screen mode will have to go back to the landing page with a video and thumbnail to have access to all these resources. Top right of the landing page of Can Watch, there's a button to have assistance or technical assistance. Well, that's what it says, so it's quite clear. If ever you encounter issues with broadcast, with anything, don't hesitate to click on that button after looking into the troubleshooting notes when you connected. You can also send an email if ever you encounter problems. support@webcastcanada.com. So, if you have any issues with the application, simply go in the chat lounge, ask the organizers anything it says in the app, and then we can help you. Thank you, Juliette. The support of this event with the application will help us to stay connected with all the speakers, with other people also present throughout the day. When using the app, you earn points that help you to earn fantastic rewards. So we have surprises for you. On top of the chat or general chat where you can post your comments, you can also join any of the 14 networking communities linked to development and global health. Don't hesitate to connect to those lounges to network with colleagues of similar interest at any time or during the networking breaks around 1 p.m. and 2:30 p.m. today. So keep this in mind, 1 p.m. and 2:30 p.m. You can join us in the app if you have not done it through the landing page. You can do this on your computer or by downloading the mobile app, which we recommend to you. So use the email address you have used to sign up and enter Impact 2021. Impact 2021. Thank you, Frédérique. We know that many of you have already talked about SME on that networks, and you can use hashtag USME or hashtag GHIX. All the Can Watch resources are involved also. So before looking at the agenda for today, I'd like to remind you that for those who were not able to be with us yesterday, unfortunately, well, I'd like to mention that the content was recorded and will be posted on the Can Watch website. You will have links sent to you in your inbox. As you may imagine, we have a fantastic program for you today. Martine and I will look into partnerships in global health and development with French-speaking nations while looking into the last decade and also exploring what is in store for us in this coming decade. We'll have also Sogha, a Nigerian band that will be performing for us. I don't know if I've even pronounced their name correctly. What matters is that you stick around because you'll love their music. Before heading to our different workshops, we'll have a special stretching session with Canadian Olympic athletes. Yes, Justine, Maxime, and Chloé Dufour-Lapointe are with us. Fantastic, Juliette. Martine and I will be guiding you for the second part of the program where members and leaders of health will be sharing their knowledge through presentations and interviews that will be talking about health programs in Haiti as part of the pandemic, the context of the pandemic, yes, and social and political troubles. Also, a workshop on genders in different environments. Yes, WHOVA has a networking lounge for you. Don't hesitate to post your comments to talk to our presenters throughout the day under the general theme under community. Yes. So before giving the floor to Juliette, who will be introducing our first speaker, the one for land acknowledgement, I'd like you to mention in the chat what traditional land you are joining us from. And now I have the honor and privilege to introduce Daniel Richet. He is a professor, actor, and storyteller for over 40 years. He's been doing great things in Canada, and in the last 42 years, he's played on different stages during great events. He is looking for his roots to share the oral traditions of First Nations of the Abenaki Nation. But Daniel has explored all nations in North America. He takes time to get to know people and their customs so that his stories are as authentic as possible. Hello, Mr. Richet. hello, kwe, fani sego, bonjour. Those are all different ways to say hello. In French, English, Métis, Abenaki, and Mohawk. And it's really a pleasure to be here with you. A long, long time ago. Some would say thousands of years, much before large sails boats and the arrival of people from the other side of the pond, lived First Nations on a turtle's back, as we say. We lived like our elders, by listening. Elders have a lot to teach to us, and we wanted to live based on 7 teachings: truth, humbleness, truth, love, respect. Respect is very important. We respect the earth, and Mother Earth gives us back to us. We give to Earth, and the earth gives back. We try to live in harmony. But time came by, the large boats arrived, and things have changed since. But one thing stays true, is that our customs are still very important. At some point, we tried to erase our past, our roots. Unfortunately, we wanted to keep sharing our tongue, the ways we interact with Mother Earth. Today, back in Ottawa region, on both sides of the river, we are on Anishinaabe Algonquin nations. These are unceded territories. These are lands that we still respect. We owe a lot to the Algonquin Anishinaabe nations. With our cultures, they helped to make this land breathe. We'd like to thank all the First Nations, Inuits, and Métis also, who came from the mix between people here and those over the pond. Elders have brought a lot to this earth. Their culture added a lot to us. Before saying or doing anything, we need to think about the past, future, and the future 7 generations. My grandmother said that when the Creator created us, we were made by intention: ears to listen, 2 eyes to look, a nose to breathe and feel, and a mouth to share medicine, water, food, and words. During this conference, I hope that you will be listening. I hope that you will hear what we say, and that you will be in peace. Fantastic. Thank you, Mr. Richer. This is very moving. Exactly the sort of thing that we need to keep in mind to start this conversation. Oftentimes in the more modern time that we live in, we forget the past 7 generations. Our thinking needs to be not short-term, but long-term. On creativity, diversity, innovation, I really feel that everything is possible when our horizon is a little bit longer. You know, nowadays we love technology and we think that this is all we need. But we need heart. And everything that Mr. Richer just shared with us. And we need people who are working, and regardless of what happens, are ready to do what is needed to further things. I have with me two co-hosts who are doing exactly that. So let's start a little roundtable with Martine and Frédérique. A question that is far from simple, but we need to start somewhere. Could you talk to us about your experience in Haiti, about evolutions of investments? Well, look, we know throughout the years there were several changes in Haiti. We need a lot of money to do that, and it is no easy task to know, as an outsider, what happens there. Can you talk to us about success in Haiti thanks to Canada's successes? Yes, thank you, Juliette. As I've just mentioned in my presentation at the beginning, I've been working over 20 years in Haiti. Projects, Canadian investments, I've seen a lot of it. First, when I came in, it was about AIDS, HIV, a key topic of the 90s especially. I have to say that Canada, along with other stakeholders there, contributed to success in Haiti because the HIV positive rates did not go up in Haiti as we feared that it would, and rather went down. And this is exceptionally important in Haiti. It is not over, but that means that this is a battle that was led by everyone. And our results have been very positive, acknowledged worldwide. The second phase deals with investments related to Muskoka, investments where Canada was an important leader. So when talking about 2006, 2007, that was all about maternal and child health to reduce mothers, women mortality rates, and children under 5 mortality. Currently, we are dealing with what we called an important stage on reproductive rights and reproductive health, especially for women. Maybe Frédérique would like to add to this? Yes, thank you, Martine. As Martine just mentioned, 2006, 2007, we had a lot of investment for maternal and children health. Earthquake in 2010, a lot of investments had been made and were made fragile because of the earthquake, because of the investment that was to be done, other than in health. Obviously, we can agree that health in Haiti can be seen as a luxury because it is a pay-per-use service, and people go there as a last recourse, a last resort. I will be speaking most specifically about Mission Inclusion, an organization where I spent the last 9 years. We implemented a project starting in 2015 in the Léogâne region, really epicenter of the 2010 earthquake, and 5 years later, mortality, maternal and children mortality rates were very high, astronomical, 50% higher than Canada in terms of maternal mortality, 8 times higher in Canada. So really quite unthinkable. The objective of the project is really to raise awareness to the population, to go to healthcare services, increasing the use by population of healthcare services, especially women, and to get out of that culture where, well, our grandparents and parents delivered a baby at home. So why should we go to healthcare centers? The second point was to increase the quality of services offered and increase the availability of their services. After the earthquake, several organizations that were delivering free services changed the landscape. We were supporting these services so that they were high quality and available also. The third point was really support also of everything that is decentralized Department of Health services to coordinate services in the community. The project started in 2015 and it is still ongoing currently, and we see results where today people see reduced mortality rates, and that is very encouraging. They go to services. There's obviously a lot of upheaval on the health sectors, environmental, political turmoil, but when we see those types of results, they are a positive light for the future. If I may add, yes, Frédérique, one of the lessons learned at Doctors of the World and, for example, Northwest departments and the Cité Soleil ghetto and is really, or the slum rather, is the basic healthcare approach. It's really to be close to populations, close to women that we work with, and that proximity was made successful. Makes it so people start to trust our services more, and we can geographically bring them closer to health institutions through different means, through community-based approaches with health agents who create those types of events. Also with traditional midwives. They are absolutely essential. In large majority, those traditional midwives are the one delivering, but they don't come from the healthcare services. We need to create that relation between midwives and healthcare centers so that women deliver in safer spaces. That is really one of the lessons learned that is absolutely essential. Women are really at the core of what you are doing. I think women are an integral part of the solution. At least that is my impression. You are the experts. Can you talk to us about the feminist approach in international development? I feel like Canada really put the finger on something important here. Canada is a leader in types of feminist approaches. Can you tell us a little bit more about that, Frédérique? Yes. Women are part of the solution, obviously. They represent 50% of the population. And so if you think that they are not part of the solution, well, there's some things that is missing here that we're not doing right. The feminist approach, launched in 2017 by the government, is, I would say, it's really at the core of the Canadian international development approach. It is a transformative approach, not only about a quota of women taking part in activities, or to make sure that women have access also to our activities, just like before, but it's really about working on those foundations, having a transformative approach in the actions that we implement. I would say that it's very interesting also with everything that Martine has just mentioned, reproductive health and rights. I was reading on statistics this morning. When we think that 10% of teenagers are either pregnant or already have a child, we've just made life much tougher. It's going to be tough for the rest of their lives. I would say that it is essential or very important, especially when talking about sexual and reproductive health, that women are understand their rights to family planning, to reproductive health. They are aware of possibilities that exist for them of delaying pregnancies, of saying no. This is important so that they have access to the same economic opportunities as men. If they became pregnant too early, if their health is more fragile, it then becomes very much harder to be in the same level footing and to catch up to what men in the community and the society have done. I think that's how it has to go through in IT, formal and also reproductive and sexual health to reach gender equality.
I would add about this, I totally agree with everything Frédérique has said, and I would add, actually, a few years ago, the United Nations adopted the Sustainable Development Goals, which must be reached until from now until 2030. Now, when we look at many countries in the Francophonie, these are countries with very high poverty rates. They're part of the group of countries which are least developed. And if we look at the results reached concerning reduction of mortality, maternal mortality, also concerning the rates of the family planning, we are still far from the goal we want to reach. And here we have to ask ourselves questions. What have we done correctly and what haven't we yet done correctly? And this is where we arrive at the question of women's rights, because I think we are really at the core of the issue here. I've seen in my daily work how many times I've heard, how many women I've heard say, oh, they don't want to go give birth in the hospital because they're not well, not respected, the rights are not respected, or people are nasty with them, or because people tell them they are not considered as human beings, as women who need in a moment of fragility, like when you're giving birth, to be protected and to be, accompanied, to be surrounded. This is dealt like a purely medical act, childbirth. This is just one example of non-respect of rights. When I think about young women, for example, they will rather be they will be discriminated against because they became pregnant without being married, or because their parents don't agree. So instead of taking them to the health center to be taken in charge of, those services will be refused to them because they're ashamed of them. So imagine what this means for these young women and the risks that they take for themselves and for their children, and the consequences this has on their development. We must talk about women's rights. We must talk about the rights of young women, and we must consider what are these obstacles which prevent us from arriving at these goals, because just putting health centers, building health centers will not solve the problem. It doesn't bring the women and young women towards these health centers. Just giving equipment doesn't solve the problem either. We have to also work with men. More and more, we're talking about questions of masculinity for a long time now. Feminist groups, and they were right at that point of time in history, said, oh, we have so much work to do with women, we don't have time to work with men. But now we realize that men could be part of the solution and not just part of the problem. And at this point of time, in communities where men have a lot of power and take many decisions dealing with women's health, we also have to work with those men to show them that they have interests. It's in their own advantage to respect the rights of their spouses and to allow them to have access to health services. It's in the interest of the whole family. So really, there's an enormous amount of work to be done on that issue, and we're not finished. we're just scratching the surface. The policy of international aid in Canada leads us really in this direction. And I would say it's a very positive point. Also, compared to all of the organizations, the other organizations with which we work, who don't necessarily have the same approach, but still, I think we have a lot to share with the other ONGs that are working with us. I'd like to add, Martine, you're totally right. The work with men is so important. And we often realize when we work with men, and we've seen it inside our project, that it's just a question of education. Men are not involved because we didn't educate them to get involved, and they didn't see the added value. But once we start working with them, they are our best allies. And I remember visits where the fathers would take their children to get vaccinated, and it was kind of the first to do this. Often it's just a question of, no, it's women. It's women who take the kids to get vaccinated. It's the mothers who take care of the children, everything dealing with the health of children. But as soon as we associate the father and we show him the advantage of, and we demystify all of this, and we start talking about women's rights, and even there are even some men who kind of who start becoming better fathers, and they find it more important to be fathers. And often it's just a question of education. They just haven't been raised like that, so they don't do it, and they just perpetuate these stereotypes, this non-inclusion in the family simply because they don't know. It's fascinating to listen to you, ladies, because honestly, I live in a country of the G8, and I still hear women here who have the same problems. I have the impression that the connection, the thread here is, how could I put it? Yes, it's a lack of education, but it's also the socioeconomic aspect. Those who are at the bottom of the ladder are often forced to just follow tradition, and it's ingrained in the culture. So you have an impact not just on health of women, on the economy, but also on culture. And this is incredible work that you're doing. Look, I know we don't have a lot of time, but we couldn't have this conversation without dealing today with the consequences of the pandemic of COVID-19, the impact on the economy, that's of course huge throughout the world. Also impact on communities. We've also heard false information circulating about the virus. This is, wherever you live on the planet. Now, what is the impact on health and the indicators of world health? Could you talk more specifically about the impact on food security and malnutrition, Martine? Are you comfortable with this? Well, we can talk about, yes, about the impact of COVID, important impacts on health and women's health and children's health in the countries where we work. Even if in those countries the COVID did not appear as a health problem that was as acute as in the countries of the G8, as you've said so clearly, nevertheless, well, there are cases of COVID, but there are far less mortality in countries like Haiti, Burkina Faso, Senegal, or others where we work. Nevertheless, the rumors that were disseminated around this epidemic meant that many women simply did not come for their prenatal consultation. They didn't come to take whatever the planning method because they thought that it was in the hospitals or in health centers that it would catch this famous disease called COVID. And we've seen during the past few months, the attendance for these institutions have plummeted. We've really seen a reduction in their presence. And this is dramatic. It's dramatic as an impact on women and on children. It goes against all of the work that we've been doing for so many years. So this was very difficult for us to observe this. And now we have work to be done, a huge work to make people aware, to educate, to inform, to explain to people that it's not in the hospitals where you catch COVID-19. And what are the consequences of staying away from these health centers? So that is one of the first impacts that we have. We have also the impact of, well, on the questions of nutrition. A child who has a problem of malnutrition, if he's not screened in time, he'll die, obviously. And if he's not taken up by the medical services, if the mothers don't dare go to the health center, there's an impact on mortality of children. So in this sense, this forces us to do a lot of work of to inform the population, to really make them aware of the prevention means and protection means and what COVID really is. We also had to do all kinds of work as far as hygiene and protection measures in the health centers. Well, obviously, COVID, it's a transmissible disease. Like in Haiti, there was cholera. Already there are hygiene measures and prevention measures that have been implemented in Haiti. And what we're currently doing is we're trying to institutionalize, rather, all of these hygiene and prevention measures in the health centers, because there will be another crisis. There will be another medical crisis eventually. There will be some other disease that will be transmissible and that we'll have to, well, protect ourselves from by using these measures of protection. So we have to institutionalize this work. And it's something that we're currently doing, but it's something which is also part of our daily life. Questions of hygiene, questions of in the environment. These are all questions which are at the heart of the work that we do in the health centers and with the populations. Really. Thank you, Martine. Frédérique, yes? Oh, I would just add that, well, of course, COVID has struck in countries, well, struck all the countries, but all countries do not start with the same initial values. Here we were talking about sanitary measures, social distancing, we had remote medicine. So here in Canada, we were able to adapt. I'm not saying that there were any impacts, there were just impacts here too, but of course, in countries where we work, telemedicine, calling a doctor over the internet, or it's not a method accessible to everybody. So of course, as Martine said, medical visits, well, we've really seen a huge reduction in the medical consultations. And this was a huge loss compared to where we used to be in Haiti. This frequency of going to see doctors or health centers, we were proud of our levels. So of course, this plummet in attendance in health centers was an issue. What I would also say is that the pandemic of COVID-19 had an impact on women, a stronger impact on women. Women were far more hurt by this pandemic. We even call it the ghost pandemic because we spoke a lot about health, but it also had impacts on other aspects. Women are often those who have jobs that are more precarious. So these were the first who were laid off. Also, women are usually ones who take care of their families, so they were exposed because when they went to go take care of their families, they were more exposed. And we asked people to stay at home. So there you get all the issues of gender-based violence or domestic violence. So women were really sort of say doubly impacted, or they were subject to even more of the effect of this pandemic. And the impact, we're currently considering the impact in 2020 and 2021. Well, I think the consequences will last for many years to come. We're also talking about food safety. Often it's a woman who's in charge of feeding the whole family. So once again, when we talk about agriculture, people were not able to go in the fields to prevent the transmission of the disease. So we will see the consequence of this pandemic. I'm sure we will continue to see the consequences of this pandemic for the coming years. And as Martine said so well, it's the first pandemic, but there will be certainly other ones. And we have to be prepared to the other medical crises that will occur. So you're making me terrified here. I've got goosebumps since I'm so afraid. I have a question because I know here in the countries of the G8, it's not only women who were subject to the impacts, but especially colored women of color. When you talk about locations like Haiti, is it also the case that women of color who have the most impact? I imagine, but I don't want to, impose my beliefs. What's the reality in Haiti? Well, I would say that in Haiti, yes, go ahead. I'd say that in Haiti, well, we won't really talk about women of color, but we'll talk about the rural versus the urban areas. And of course, in the rural areas, women suffered even more effects compared to the capital, for example, Port-au-Prince. So this is where we see all the inequalities kind of jump out once more. And of course, the people who are already fragile become even more fragile. So to speak, the gap becomes even bigger. So I'll let you complete, Martine. Well, actually, I'd rather feel like saying that, yes, it's true, COVID has an impact. Well, there are all kinds of people who have the COVID virus in those countries, but it's not necessarily the first cause of mortality. And my fear, really, my fear is that, and also the fear, we've spoken about this a lot in our organization, it's that the money of the funding agents will go towards COVID rather than continuing towards the sexual and health or the struggle against malnutrition. And it's absolutely important and essential to continue investing in the other issues, not just COVID. And not to prevent ourselves from fighting against COVID, but COVID might not be as much of a problem as things like sexual and reproductive health and malnutrition. It's essential that we must not stop fighting against the other problems just because of the appearance of COVID. COVID must not monopolize everything. Women, on the contrary, need us to continue to invest and to defend their rights and to make sure that the services will be available, to make sure that they will be accessible for them, and that the services will be there where the women are. So if we kind of abandon that side, we will lose all the gains for which we've been fighting for so many years. And that really is a message that is absolutely important that I want to make clear today. Really, we must not forget the investment. On the contrary, we have to increase investments on these other issues there. Yes, and I think Mr. Richer really put us in the context. It's not just short term. We're talking about the next 7 generations. We have to think long term. So thank you very much, Frédérique and Martine. And that being said, well, this almost concludes my participation with you here today. Look, we'll stay connected thanks to the app for about 15 minutes to answer all of your questions and to chat with you if you feel like connecting with us. But before that, we will present the musical session. I know I had promised this earlier on, but now this is reality. You've stayed with us, and it would have been so nice to have this conversation in person. But this conversation was still very interesting. Thank you to my co-host. And now we'll all three of us stay here to appreciate the Nigerian group called Sogha, who will be followed afterward, as I said earlier on. For those who are maybe don't know them, well, we have people here who will help us stretch out. And by the way, these are Olympic athletes who are Canadian. So we'll have a stretching session after the musical session. Stretching session hosted by the Dufault-Lapointe sisters. And during this brief break, oh, do not hesitate to change rooms, to go stretch, go get a coffee, or maybe even a snack, and take a few minutes to network on the app. See you soon. Thank you, Juliette. So Martine and I will be back right after the break to give you detailed instructions so you'll be able to have access to the 2 breakout rooms that will follow. So concerning the session we'll see, you can find a profile of the group as well as the lyrics of their song in French and in English on the website of Canwash by clicking on the event button. So now I'll introduce the Sogha group. It was created in 2004. It's a group of neo-traditional music, i.e. they associate modern instruments and traditional instruments. Sogha means beauty in the Zama language, one of the languages of Nigeria. I'm learning something today. The group is composed of 10 members, 5 instrument players, 3 singers, and 2 dancers that you will notice they're dressed in white in one of the pictures. The traditional instruments used are the kalangu, which is a kind of drum, the kuntigui, which is like a one-string guitar, the kalbas, a bass guitar, and a solo guitar. Sogha has already recorded 2 albums under the artistic direction of the maestro Bankana Maiga of Mali, and also they record several singles. The group mostly sings questions on peace, well-being of women, and other songs taken from the Nigerian folklore. The group has a main objective of promoting women's songs in Nigeria. On my end, I can introduce the Dufour-Lapointe sisters, who are Canadian Olympic athletes who are famous for their accomplishments in acrobatic skiing. Justine Dufour-Lapointe is a Canadian skier, an Olympic champion in Sochi in 2014 and silver medal in 2018 in Pyeongchang. Chloe Dufour-Lapointe, on her part, was a world champion of acrobatic skiing of the FIS in 2013 after winning gold in the World Championships. She had won the silver medal in the World Championship of Acrobatic Skiing of the FIS in 2011 and finished 5th at the Vancouver Olympic Games in 2010. She won the silver medal at the Olympic Games of Sochi in 2014. Now, concerning Maxime Dufour-Lapointe, she also participated in the Winter Olympic Games of 2014. The 3 sisters were the 3rd trio of sisters in the same individual event on the history of Winter Games. But before beginning our stretching session with the 3 sisters, I want to, in the name of all the people who collaborated in the Global Health Import Exchange and the whole team of the Canadian Partnership for Women's and Children's Health, to thank Juliette, who was with us today, and she shared her stories of Canada throughout the world with the publics outside the sector of World Health. We want to thank her for having helped us establish new relationships today. Thank you, Juliette. Thank you, Juliette.
Bonjour, je me nomme Aïchatou Ali, artiste chanteuse au sein du groupe Sogha du Niger. Le groupe Sogha du Niger est un groupe de musique qui associe instruments modernes et traditionnels du Niger et d'Afrique. Nous avons su relever le défi contre la stigmatisation envers les femmes qui chantent. Aujourd'hui, nous sommes bien appréciés dans toute la sous-région africaine grâce à notre persévérance. Nous luttons en ce moment contre la COVID-19 tant bien que mal pour pouvoir sortir notre musique sur d'autres cieux. Merci.
Sur le talent des royaumes et des empires qui déploient son immensité, d'est en ouest, du Sogha au massif d'Afafi, du sud au nord, du Damagaram aux zones des dunes, des raies et des ergues. Réjouissons-nous. Où la Mettons à contribution notre ingéniosité pour perpétuer les prédictions de nos aînés.